Mandy, stay there. Don't come over here.
Okay, ready?
I don't prepare to go over
It's
there.
okay, it's okay. We'll switch to a cell phone. Okay, I'm going to call Rabbi Eleff in a second. We want to... Great honor and pleasure, we call upon Rabbi Eli Eleff from the OU to address it. Rabbi Eleff, please.
Make it short.
I guess we got a video on. Otherwise, I would sit down. I'm not here to give any long drashos. I was told that the Olam was interested in the latest and greatest for Pesach. So, without going to too many details, I just want to bring to attention, Pesach, certain things stay the same, some things change and change rapidly. For example, and this is also where it's important, especially as RABBANOT, to understand the power of constituency, where, I'll give you an example right now. Most people here, I presume, are in the New York metropolitan area, where you can get a plethora of kosher Pesach food items at any store of your choice without really having to think about it or worry about it. One of the staples of kosher Pesach foods for the last several decades has been some of the national brands of kosher Pesach yogurt. Unfortunately, this year there are no national brands of kosher Pesach yogurt available because those national brands have decided that it was not worth their while to produce kosher Pesach. The market research showed them there wasn't enough demand, the cost was too great to warrant stopping production and then having kosher Pesach production for that.
Yogurt?
Yes, yogurt. There are no national brands of kosher Pesach yogurt available this year. What? There are no national brands of kosher Pesach yogurt available this year. One of the things we recommend is if it's something that you appreciated or something that you wanted, to really reach out to the companies as a consumer, not as a rabbi, not as a kosher certifying agency, but to say that, listen, we've been enjoying your product for years. One of the reasons we're loyal to your brand is because of the fact you've always served us in our time of need, Passover, and we're very sorry to see that you didn't have anything available this year. Things like that do make a tremendous difference from the manufacturer's perspective. So those that are looking for kosher Pesach yogurts, for better or for worse, you're going to be stuck with the Chol Yisrael ones. For those that keep Chol Yisrael, that's fantastic. For those that don't, that's what there is. It's not so, as I mentioned before, it's not so much a problem here in the New York metropolitan area, but for those communities that are further out, this is a big deal because they don't have things available. But in terms of developments in the kosher Pesach market as well, I would bring to your attention a few things. One is people ask us, what's the OU's policy with regards to kosher Pesach products? The OU's policy is that anything that's kosher Pesach that has an OUP on it, which stands for Pesach, not Par, is that it requires hashgacha t'midas. So for those people that may not want to eat OU tuna fish on a regular basis because they're afraid of issues of maybe visual akum, any type of tuna fish that, for example, ShopRite has the OUP tuna fish available, that would actually be Bishul Yisrael besides doing kosher Pesach as well. Anything with the OUP, except for bottled water, would be run with hashgacha t'midas. For those that enjoy alcoholic beverages and are a connoisseur and have moved past Slivovitz and wine, this year we are proud to announce that there are 3 varieties of tequila that are certified by the OU for Pesach. There's, I don't have the names offhand, but they're on our website. You can go to the oukosher.org or oupastor.org. There's a product search bar over there. You can just type in tequila and there'll be 3 different products that do come up over there. Actually, I can see if I can bring them up. 1 second.
How about Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola is available just in regular Coke and in Diet Coke in the New York metropolitan area, Los Angeles, and bottled also in Jacksonville. Coke has also cut back over the years because, again, their market research.
Florida too?
What?
In Florida?
In Florida, it's bottled in Jacksonville.
What?
Bottled in Jacksonville. There are
The bottling company is over there.
Yeah, and then it's shipped down to wherever the distribution area is. There used to be a much greater distribution and production in many more places. Again, Coca-Cola has also cut down because again, their market research shows them it's in these, Florida, California, and New York, where the majority of the kosher Pesach needs are. They've also cut down the amount of products as well to just that basic Coke and Diet Coke. See if I can find which brands those were. Give me a second.
Yeah, I didn't find any tequila. I did a search.
It's there, but 1 second. That's not always certified, so I can't comment on the products that aren't always certified. Okay, here we go. The brands that are certified kosher Pesach is the Nochi Blanco Tequila, Nochi Real Pasado Tequila, and Zarza Silver Tequila. Also, there's a whiskey that is certified kosher Pesach this year under the name of Ethan's Reserve, and that is actually a sour gum whiskey. So it's coming from the stalk of the wheat plant, not from the wheat, not from the kernel, not from the grain. And the way that it's processed is not ground either, so therefore there's no problem of chametz come from that. I had a friend of mine who went to one of the local liquor stores in my neighborhood and tried out, and told me it was actually quite good. So for those that are looking for that, again, we've moved on from Slivovitz. One of the things that we do at our office is we have an ingredient department that constantly researches what's going on in the world of food production. And I actually have, for those that are not signed up as RABBOnim, we have a monthly newsletter called the Daf HaKashrus that gives the latest in kashrus developments, as well as a consumer quarterly newsletter, the Daf HaKashrus Consumer. And I have some copies that we can give out afterwards as well for those that like to take it. And one of our research showed us recently is that sugar is not so pashut anymore. It used to be sugar is one of those things that's acceptable across the board for Pesach. Our research has showed us that companies now use certain enzymes as clarifying agents and anticoagulation agents in the sugar to prevent it from clumping, to prevent it to make sure that it has a clean sheen to it. Those enzymes that are used in it are chametz. They would be bottled before Pesach, so our recommendation is to either buy those sugars that we have on our listing, which have been vetted to be chametz free, or if you have to buy one of those that's not listed as chametz free, make sure that you purchase it before Pesach. Similarly, a lot of questions we get is people do a lot of their shopping at Costco for Pesach, and they come across the Costco water. The question is, what's with the Costco water? They have minerals that are added to it. The way that it's produced with those minerals is that they use a tablet that uses a starch-based binder to hold that tablet down, which is then dissolved into the water. So if you purchase your Costco water before Pesach, again, it's not a problem because the amount of chametz in there would be bottled. However, the amount of time it takes to produce that water in the facilities till it gets to the shelf is about a day to 2. So therefore, we would not recommend purchasing any type of water from Costco, the Costco brand water that has minerals added, on Pesach because of this issue as well. One of the things that we want to bring to your attention, especially as RABBOnim, is the fact that while for Dari Daris, Klal Yisrael has been super makbid on Pesach. We all know the klal of Churma the Pischa, that where people were even makbid on other things of the year, came Pesach time, and they're even more makbid on what's going on for Pesach. And in theory that remains true, but we have all these events that are being advertised now across the world and globe where you can spend Pesach, wherever you want to go. Find a place, take a dartboard, throw it, maybe not in Ukraine this year, but in Poland and Greece and China and maybe even in Mitzrayim, you can reenact the Exodus from Egypt with your paid admission. And none of these places that are advertising make any mention of the kashrus that's involved. You can look at them, they'll tell you our standards are Hasidic Shechita, non-Gebrach Chol Yisrael, which is a wonderful thing. I'll let you know a little secret. You'd be hard pressed to find Shechita in the United States or in the world for that matter that's not Hasidic. Kamat every Shechet that's working industrially is Hasidic. There really isn't such a thing as a non-Hasidic Shechita in the United States, at least probably most of the world. But again, writing something like that doesn't mean anything, and very few of these programs actually advertise who the Rabbi Machshir is and what's going on over there. So those that have congregants that are going to these Pesach hotels, these Pesach programs, I recommend that if they're asking you if it's okay to look very carefully at that, because a lot of places there's other issues as well besides the regular Pesach issues. There are times when it's not an entire hotel that's rented out for Pesach, it's a part of a hotel, which means then that behind the scenes you've got a kosher kitchen, you've got a non-kosher kitchen, where very often things transfer back and forth, and without having the right mashgichim there and the right methodologies and safeguards in place, you may have many issues, besides the other issues, such as Achona and Yantiv, as well as, and Amir La'akum and things like that, as well as possibly even Bishul Akum. We've had cases where it's been reported to us. Actually, if you take a look, you will see that there are a grand total of 0 OU certified Pesach programs because we're too machmir for most of the caterers. A lot of them are possibly OU caterers. They told us, Rabbi, if you certify us, we won't be able to make any money on Pesach. So it's something just to keep in mind, when people ask you about these programs, to see exactly what's going on, to make sure that, you can, let your Balabatim know that it's something beyond a shadow of a doubt that, will meet their standards. Because for some reason, when people are so machmir in their house, they go out of the house, all of a sudden, even where people are machmir not to mish on Pesach, all of a sudden now it became like, oh, I'm going to a hotel, what's the big deal? And it's even worse than, what they were quote unquote makel on at home. That's just the basis of things to keep in mind for Pesach as well. One of the things I mentioned as well, a lot of times we have questions, what's the story with quinoa? Quinoa is actually, from a biological perspective, a distant cousin of the rhubarb plant. Has nothing to do with any type of legumes or grains. It just happens to have a grainy consistency. So therefore, from a Pesach perspective, OU Postim feel that it's not a problem. Now, this is something that we only had a Pesach on recently. For years, we didn't want to get involved. We said, let's speak to your own personal Rav, because it depends on how they view things. I'm not going to go through the whole history of kidneys and what goes through that. There's a lot of wonderful articles about there. But what came about was all of a sudden OU certified caterers, not the ones running Pesach programs, but that had programs, let's say a restaurant or a caterer that was running out of their commissary for Pesach, they wanted to have sushi for Pesach. Another way to have sushi for Pesach is with quinoa. So they said, listen, we need a Pesach, can we use the quinoa, can we not use the quinoa? So I personally looked into it and felt that there was no problem with the quinoa. However, the way quinoa is packaged is, most of it is packaged high in the Andes Mountains in South America. And there's a tremendous amount of chametz that is in these facilities. They're packed in lines that have wheat, that have barley in them, things like that. And therefore, we would only recommend the quinoa for Pesach that actually has the Kosher Pesach hashgacha, to make sure that the Mashiach was there, to make sure that the lines were actually clean and nothing was added to that. A lot of times we get questions, but they say, oh, but I can't find it. Can I? So in theory, somebody could check their quinoa, same way Sardim check their beans for kidney. There's their kidneys where they would check it, go over 3 times. The problem is that the difference between the shape of a quinoa kernel and a wheat or barley kernel is very minute, and most people are not going to be able to tell the difference. So therefore, we really don't recommend doing something like checking like that. Otherwise, there's all sorts of products that are on the marketplace, especially in New York. You can go to any number of supermarkets and see what's on the shelf over there, and that's a basic rundown of the latest and greatest this year for Pesach. Those that happen to be listening to 5 Towns, we are having an event this evening at 7:30 p.m. at the Kiel Space Igud Tzvi, where we'll have, in conjunction with the Bot of the 5 Towns, we'll be going more in depth into Pesach Tashrim, Pesach wine production, as well as fielding questions about the various OU policies in Pesach. I believe the message went out that we have time for a couple of questions and answers. If someone has any questions, I can take them now for the next couple of minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, quick question for you. So a lot of the kosher lines have been impacted by Corona this year.
A lot of the
Kosher lines have been impacted by Corona.
Can you define kashrus lines?
Things that we would normally see kosher for Pesach. We're not seeing the products this year around.
I don't think those aren't necessarily impacted by Corona.
So this is what we've been told, that they're not producing as much as they used to due to Corona.
That's true in general. Right now, as everyone's aware of the supply chain issues with those who trying to do work on their house now realize that a 2x4, which was $4 a plank last year, is now $12 a plank. It's affecting industry across the globe, especially now with the war in Russia. It also further exacerbates the problem. A lot of companies that were manufacturing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, basically with 3 shifts, have cut their production times to 5 days a week, sometimes only 2 shifts, with a significant cut, obviously, in output because they could not get any workers. Part of it was a fear of going out to the workplace because of COVID. Part of it was because it was more lucrative for most people that were making above minimum wage, even above minimum wage, to stay home because the government paid you more money to stay home than to actually work. Since that government assistance ran out, we are starting to see workers trickle back to the marketplace, but not as fast as people thought it would happen. So still, we're looking at probably till the end of the year until those type of labor shortages fix themselves out. In terms of the actual Pesach production, if the company produced for Pesach, they get accepted in situations I mentioned before, where the company felt it was not lucrative for them to start running those for Pesach. It's come out all available as well. And a lot of these supply chain issues that you're seeing have happened over the last couple of months. Most of the Pesach production and the food that you have in your stores, except for perishables, were produced probably 6 months ago, maybe even up to a year ago. People say, oh, it must be busy in the OU right before Pesach. I said, it is, but not for reasons you think. So you're not producing kosher Pesach food. I said, our Pesach department in terms of production is pretty quiet right before Pesach because everything's done. It's, we get a lot of consumer inquiries. Our hotlines get about an average of 800 to 1,000 calls a day. We get another 200 to 300 emails a day from consumers with Pesach questions. We're running outreach seminars and the like. But the actual production will probably be busier right after Pesach than it is before Pesach. So a lot of those supermarkets, they all had to put in the orders ready by December of last year of the products that they wanted. So even if they start telling you that the price is more, it may be for freight, or maybe just they figured they can make more money off you because they already locked on the contract before most of these price changes really hit. Yeah.
In thinking about coming across, some advertisements in some hotels, has the OU had occasion this year to work with the yacht cruise park? Have you listened about the yacht park?
At the Orthodox Union, I can't comment on the liability of other conscious organizations.
Have you had a chance to work with them?
I can't comment on any other RABBOnim, as I'm sure you could well understand. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity, and again, if anyone's in Cedar, 7:30 tonight, we'd be glad to see you, and wishing everyone a Chag Kosher Sameach.
Thank you, Member of the Say something.
Just wanted to